Hello, hello, hello. This is Demon Dream, also known as Drakena on the Discord servers. And surprise, surprise, I am back with another video. It's been a while. But, well, I'm sorry, this is an awkward beginning. It's been a while. If my voice is a little raspy or I look like I'm dying, it's because it's way too hot and we don't have air conditioning. So, back to the subject. Today it is all about Inanna. I decided to do a little piece on her because, Pride Month was just recently. I'd intended to do it during Pride Month, but shenanigans got in the way. However, there are a few shirts floating around. You may have seen them, you may have not. I wish I could put a little picture here so you could see. But everybody loves Inanna. It's not too far off base. Even if you're not familiar with Mesopotamian polytheism, you've probably at least heard of Inanna. There's that goddess chant. How does it go again? Isis, Astarte, Diana, Hecate, Demeter, Kali, Inanna. Yeah, so a few in the Wiccan crowd, various other places, the feminist crowd in particular. Inanna's gotten around. Granted, her reputation has been fiddled with and turned upside down and right side up in every single which way, but you can't deny that she is fairly popular. Sex and violence. What does humanity run on these days, am I right? So, I've been awkwardly rambling for way too long. Let me see if I can pull up. This is my first time truly filming on my laptop and trying to use notes on it simultaneously. I'm not going to be able to see my beautiful face, so I have no idea what this video looks like. But we are going to party. So, scroll up. Alrighty, I don't care about my notifications. Excellent. So, let's see. First of all, why do I associate Inanna so heavily with Pride Month and LGBT stuff in general? She's described a couple of times as the Lady of the Rainbow, etc., etc. Her priesthood has been described as transgender. I'll go into this further on into the video. I took so many notes. I'm really hoping I haven't gone overboard. But at the same time, can you really go overboard about the goddess of passion? So, let's see. Let's see. Here it is. And I wish I knew how to edit, otherwise I would edit out all of my little segue blah 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 blahs. Here we go. So, the Lady Inanna is highly relatable, highly relatable in numerous ways, because you may think our modern troubles are very modern, but they are not. And occasionally when you're, like me, a nerd, stumbling through obscure websites like ETCSL, looking up hymns for research purposes, you stumble across stuff like this. While I, the lady, was passing the day yesterday, while I, Inanna, was passing the day yesterday, while I was passing the day, while I was dancing, while I was singing songs all day until evening, he met me, the Lord Dumuzid met me. The Lord took me in his hands, Ushumgalana embraced me about the neck. Let me go so that I can go to our house. Dumuzid, let me go so that I can go to our house. What lie can I offer to my mother? What lie can I offer to my mother, Ningal? Let me teach you, let me teach you. Inanna, let me teach you the lies of women. My girlfriend was dancing with me in the square. She ran around playfully with me, banging the drum. She sang her sweet songs for me. I passed the day there with her in pleasure and delight. Offer this as a lie to your own mother. As for us, Let me make love to you by moonlight. Let me loosen your hair grip on the holy and luxuriant couch. May you pass a sweet day there with me in voluptuous pleasure. Well, does that sound familiar to anyone? Ladies, gentlemen, others? I've got to go home. I've got to go home. No, sweetheart, no, you don't. Just 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. But what am I going to tell her? Here, look, this is an excuse, okay? Now, can we just make out for 5 more minutes? Which then turns into an hour. Yeah, I'd say that's a story as old as time, as it were. So, yeah, let's see. Inanna, Lady of Passion, Goddess of Sex, very, very relatable. And, yeah. You know, I had this all planned out. But it's hot, it's boiling, and I can't get my thoughts on straight. So, let's see, what's the next section? Yes. So, Pride Month, LGBT stuff. One very iconic bit of information about Inanna is that she is very, very transgender friendly. Now, granted, there's not a lot of information on, there is information on changing from man into woman. There's descriptions of her priests as men who dress in women's clothing. Not so much on women who dress in men's clothing, although there is one passage. And I sifted through my books. I have way too many of those. I believe it's in Inanna, Lady of Largest Heart, that I have a passage on a woman who was considered too manly and didn't go about the habits that other women did, who went before Inanna, and she had her gender formally changed to that of a man. I would have to dig around. But there is a hymn somewhere. Let's see. In a Dictionary of Ancient Near Eastern Mythology by Gwendolyn Leick. In a bilingual Sumero-Akkadian hymn, the goddess describes herself as heavy breasts in Dadumu and a beard in Babylon, both references to the 2 genders that Ishtar could be worshipped in, but she declares, "Yet I am still Nanaya." Nanaya was either a goddess that was snowballed into Ishtar, as it were, or an epithet of Ishtar, who is the Akkadian equivalent of Inanna, although there are a couple differences. And Nanaya is very obviously a maiden goddess, mentioned in love incantations, so on and so forth. Nanaya, Lady of Sexual Attractiveness. Okay, so that's a very, very interesting point that I put in my notes, and because I am probably halfway to heat stroke, I cannot remember what I was doing. Sorry about that. I know most people don't like to see YouTubers drinking on screen, but it's the middle of July. So, yeah, the goddess herself describes herself as a little bit of both, a little bit of neither. She has both elements of what would be considered traditionally feminine power and traditionally masculine power, with the whole sex and sexuality, being very sexually persuasive when it comes to interactions with a couple of the other gods. I can't recall the myth at the moment, but I think there's one where she seduces An and one where she seduces Enki. So she has a lot of sexual power and sexual prowess. But on the other hand, Inanna is a goddess that confers kingship. Maybe that doesn't sink in, so let me say it again. Inanna is a goddess that confers kingship. This basically puts her on the level of, if I may draw some extremely broad comparisons. If you're familiar with Ra or Horus from the Egyptian pantheon, if you need a god that confers kingship, I would point at one of them. Or, let me see. Now, I'm not saying Inanna is the head of the pantheon by any means. She is not. That would go to, it varies depending on the time period, but in general, Enlil. Enlil is king of the gods, who was preceded by An, who ceded his throne to his son, basically. But Inanna, she has massive, massive, massive amounts of political power. I already said that. War goddess. Again, traditionally male pursuit, if you will. There's a hymn by Enheduanna where she is described as that goddess that goes around devouring corpses like a dog. She piles them at her feet. She makes the streets run red with blood. She turns the dancing places of the enemy cities into mourning places, where only the owls cry. War is the game of Inanna, etc., etc., etc. But she's also the goddess of love, of lust, of beauty. Not so much love. I hesitate to say love, because Inanna, while there are hymns and verses and stuff like that about the wedding of Inanna and Dumuzid, and it's very loving and very wonderful and almost adorable in a way, she's not really a love goddess in so much as she is, don't tell your mother, but we're gonna party all night kind of love, as emphasized before. So, yeah. Inanna, awesome. She's got a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, mix it all up, and what do you have? My clothes refusing to obey me. But mix it all up, and what do you have? You have a goddess of dawn and a goddess of twilight. She is the morning and evening star. I probably should have filmed this when I was not in the process of dying of heat. But the passion must out, one way or another. The passion must out. So, let's see. Notes. Save me from my brain blue screen. We have, a reference from Inanna, Lady of Largest Heart by Betty Deshong Meador. So in terms of Inanna both having male and feminine aspects in and of herself, her priesthood also had masculine and feminine aspects. Her priesthood were frequently what we would describe as transgender, although it's good in general as a rule of thumb to keep in mind that modern descriptions of sex and sexuality cannot be applied to ancient cultures, as we are not familiar with them in that aspect, and what we might see as familiar might not actually be a proper equivalent. But there is something in she takes the brooch which pins a woman's robe, breaks the needle silver thin, consecrates the maiden's heart as male, and gives to her a mace. This is part of what's described as the head overturning rite, where Inanna takes the supplicant, the devotee, the person approaching in lamentation and distress, and does the head overturning, switches them from male to female or female to male, changes right into left and left into right. The reverse is also described. She calls him by name, makes him join the ranks of women. She breaks his mace, gives to him the brooch which pins a woman's robe. So, from what I've been able to extrapolate, how do I put this? I suppose a modern equivalent would be, let's just take for iconic maleness, I live in the South, so iconic maleness would probably be a shotgun. Iconic femaleness would probably be, I don't know, to get really stereotypical, a string of pearls. So that would be the equivalent of taking a woman's string of pearls, breaking it, and giving her a shotgun. And then to the man that approaches, taking his shotgun, snapping it over her knee, and giving him a string of pearls. So, yeah, the fact that there was a ritual that outlines how to do that, to me, is very interesting. I mean, just, there's descriptions of priesthood in other areas around the Mediterranean, having transvestite priesthood. Or there is a caste in, well, actually, no, I don't want to touch on that because I don't even know enough to incorporate that into my own lecture. So let's suffice it to say, there was a cult of Cybele, I believe, with men that would dress themselves as women. And I think there were a couple occasions of them chopping off their own sensitive bits, but again, I have not read up enough on that to be sure that's not just artistic license. And let's see, as for women taking on the roles of men, I can't recall anything from Greece or Rome. I'm sure there was an occasion, but it was probably something obscure. Either way, the only other time I have found any information on a goddess changing someone's gender was, there was an occasion with Aset, the Egyptian goddess of magic, wife of Osiris, etc., etc. There was a child that was raised as one gender. I think it was a female child raised as a male, so that the father wouldn't leave or kill it or something like that, because you need to have a male heir. Raised as male, and then set to be married. But of course there's that whole complication of if you've got female bits and then you get married, it's going to be very obvious that you can't make children. So I think the mother and the child in question went before Aset and asked her for some sort of help, and Aset said, "I got you," and transformed the supplicant into a male body. And I think there was a similar Greek story, but I cannot remember it for the life of me. Either way, this is Inanna's business. This is what she does. She takes social norms, gender norms, looks at them long and hard, and throws them out the window, from what I can tell. That's a little bit of artistic license. She did not really... She worked within the social norms at the time. This is a male, this is a female, etc., etc. And then she just blurred the lines between them. It was basically she's awesome and I'm incoherent. Partially with heat, partially because I love her. And yeah. I may have rambled about the head overturning right long enough, so what's next in my notes which I should probably be following because they might be helpful? Oh, that was a description of the Gwendolyn priests. The male prostitutes comb their hair before her. They decorate the napes of their necks with colored bands. They gird themselves with the sword belt, the arm of battle. Their right side they adorn with women's clothing. Their left side they adorn with men's clothing. With jump ropes and colored cords they compete before her. The young men carrying hoops sing to her. The ascending Gwendolyn priests grasp the sword. The one who covers the sword with blood, he sprinkles blood. He pours out blood on the dais of the throne room. So that was from... Come on now. I cannot pronounce that, but basically a prayer to Inanna for Dagan A in ETCSL. And Inanna is another of the myriad names of Inanna from what I've been able to tell, especially because Inanna is mentioned multiple times as that goddess interchangeably within the prayer. So, and honestly that sounds like the best kind of party. I would love to see a parade of people dressed in drag with, we can't use real blood, so theater blood with plastic daggers, dance around in the middle of the street, all the way down the street, like a procession thing, a la, when I was in Granada, I stayed there for a year and was absolutely fascinated by some of the Catholic celebrations, especially just the sheer amount of manpower that went into hauling around the statues of the Virgin Mary on a palanquin. That was amazing. And it felt oddly pagan in a way. So, surprisingly, that event really helped me imagine what it could have been like when our culture was not so heavily saturated in cultural Christianity, despite the fact that I was literally standing in a Catholic parade. But anyway, so onward to glory and beyond we have. So, the whole Inanna as a mother goddess shenanigan, if you ever bring that up in a Mesopotamian polytheist discourse, or just someone who knows the history, you'll hear a series of groans and then a lot of simultaneous protests. There's a rare circumstance where she might have two gods that might be referenced as her children in one hymn. But for the most part, even though she does have a husband, even though in some myths that husband was chosen for her by her brother, as was appropriate to the time period, she doesn't have children, and she's not a motherly figure. She's either the figure of a young man or the figure of a young woman in terms of someone who wants to laugh and play and get it on, or someone who wants to go out and earn glory and come back from the fields of battle victorious. She's not matronly. If you want a goddess like that, I recommend Ninhursag, the Lady of the Foothills, mother of Ninurta, frequently described as mother of the gods. She with innumerable children, among them Ninkasi and Nanshe. There's an entire myth about her popping out numerous amounts of children in order to cure her husband Enki's various ailments. So if you want a mother goddess, there's her. There's lots of different goddesses that could support that description. Ninti is, I think, described in the Epic of Atrahasis. Basically, just take a look at any wife Enki is described as having, and you will have better luck. Inanna is more, as I said, sexuality, but also fertility. The main myth that everyone likes to reference at the drop of a hat is Inanna's descent. When she descends to the underworld and then is struck down and effectively dead, the men stop laying with their wives and sleep in separate rooms. The bull stops laying with the cow. The young men and women stop, issuing their curfew and gallivanting through the streets. You get the idea. The stag stops laying down with the doe, yada 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 yada. When she comes back from the underworld, everybody starts getting it on again. And that was part of the motivation for the gods wanting to bring her back in the first place, was because if people stop getting it on, pretty soon there will be no more people. So something had to be done, and Inanna had to be brought back. So, yeah. She's more a goddess of power, sexuality, the physicality of it, more so than the emotional attachment. Oh, that's not to say that Inanna in and of herself was not an emotional figure. She's not an emotional goddess. She loves her husband to bits. She loves him to absolute bits. And while when people talk about her relationship with Dumuzid, they frequently reference the descent of Inanna and Dumuzid's death, with the whole, he's throwing a party in her absence as opposed to mourning. So she says, "Take that man away immediately." And thus it is that Dumuzid goes to the underworld, but Inanna has mercy on him and has mercy on Geshtinana, and Ereshkigal has some mercy and Geshtinana and Dumuzid basically do a timeshare sort of business where she goes down to the underworld for half the year, Dumuzid goes down to the underworld for half the year, so Inanna gets her husband half the year, and yeah, we have summer and winter, Emesh and Enten. Because what is spring? What's fall? We don't know those things in our house. Nope, nope, nope. It's either hot as heck or cold as a word I don't want to say on my YouTube. Anyway, so let's see. She's frequently described as Maiden Inanna. And there's a particular myth. Granted, we've only got brief, fragmented pieces of it, and my only resource that I can use is ETCSL, and from what I remember, it's at least 7 years out of date, but it's what I've got access to. So there's a myth with a conversation between Inanna and Utu, the Lord of the Sun, where he is described as her brother in this one. With the passing of millennia, the family tree gets more and more knotted and more difficult, so it's more a circumstantial case than a firm canon that did not change over thousands of years. So in this case, Utu is her brother. And she says to him, I am unfamiliar with womanly matters. I am unfamiliar with womanly matters with sexual intercourse. I am unfamiliar with womanly matters with kissing. I am unfamiliar with sexual intercourse. I am unfamiliar with kissing. Whatever exists in the mountains, let us eat that. She basically says that she wants to go into the mountains with her brother to escort her and eat the fruits that she finds there, and thereby gain knowledge of kissing and womanly matters, and then come into the world as a woman, basically. It's fragmented and brief, so a lot of the context and so on and so forth is missing, but that's the best I can glean from the material I have available to me. So that one is a Shirnam sub to Utu F translation on ETCSL. Notes again. So yeah, she's frequently described as Maiden Inanna, and it's difficult to think of a time when she didn't know of womanly matters and didn't know of kissing, because her position as a goddess of sexuality is just iconic nowadays, really. At least with what armchair historians like myself and the numerous hordes of neo-pagans out there like myself have been able to research the whole sex and sexuality thing. She's frequently compared to Aphrodite and Astarte, even though there are very distinct differences I would like to emphasize, but I can see the easy-to-make comparisons. So, but she had to learn just like anyone else. She had to discover herself just like anyone else. She had to go through the motions to some extent like a mortal woman did in terms of... Now granted, there's different myths on exactly how it occurred, but the one I have memorized to the best of my ability is the one where her brother presents to her a shepherd and a farmer. And he wants her to marry one of them. She wants to marry the other. Endgame is she ends up with Dumuzid, who is a shepherd. And they live happily ever after, and kiss and hug, and are completely in love. And yeah, they're really cute. They're really, really cute. But, yes, I'm rambling. I'm rambling so much. I need more liquid in my system. So, that was my historical rambling. And I have no idea how long this video is going on, so I really hope I'm not talking your ears off. But I wanted to wrap it up. Granted, this wasn't very linear in the first place, but I wanted to wrap this up because this is technically in honor of Inanna, who I love, and am attempting to set up a place on my altar for her. I've got a triad of hollow books, and I'm decorating them like Mexican nichos, with the little picture in the back and the flowers on the sides and the little wooden fruits and things like that to make it real pretty. Yeah, I'm doing something similar to that for Inanna, and Nisaba, and Noska, and Nanshe. because I love them all. From the bottom of my heart do I love them all. So yeah, one of my major methods of worship, as I have said in previous videos, is the goddess first in my heart is Nisaba, the scribe goddess, which means my frequent go-to method of worship, other than lighting up some incense and incanting names most ancient and terrible, is writing. So I write lots and lots and lots of godly poetry. Can you people stop sending me notifications when I'm trying to party? I have two sort of devotional pieces of poetry, if you will, that I wrote in honor of Inanna. I did one last year at the very beginning of Pride Month, and I figured, why not? Let's keep the theme going. So, let's stop with my holy rambling and get to the glorious wonders that is praising the gods, because why not? So, you ride lions bareback into the barren places, runnels of blood dripping down your curves, slick from neck to breast in arterial spray, and heel to thigh in clay trench mud. You tip your head back, hair maiden loose, and dark with the sweat of victory, trailing musk like a fine perfume, dripping gore like holy rainwater. Where you pass, the cracked step that lies gasping for want of relief rasps hoarsely with thirst. Inanna, with lions supine at her feet, stretches out her battle-hardened arms and cracks her spine with a sound like thunder. She is painted in death, lips bruised from violent kissing and the kiss of violence. Sleepy, sated, her eyes wander the dusty terraces, and she gleams like the red evening, like the red morning that warns of the storm. Where she passes, blood-filled paw prints sprout hungry, clawed roses, with kissing soft petals, the color of dawn and dying stars. Alright, that's the first of the Untitled. And the second one that I will cap the video off with is as follows. Red-pawed lioness with jaws like the spring river, swollen with the water of the winter mountains. You, who roll in the sweet grass of the high steppe, proud stains on your pelt, green and shameless. You race the moon across the desert, lapis in your eyes and carnelian on your lips, hunting men and women alike. You follow the scent of hot blood and rumble like thunder as your claws hook into sweet flesh. Perfume and wine, crackling firelight, you curl around their shoulders like smoke, brushing cheek to cheek and hips to hips. Heat drags in your wake like lingering hands and wandering eyes, as the cold wind finds no quarter in the den of the lady's cubs. Dance, she commands, and dance we do, as Dumuzi dances on the knees of Inanna. Live, she commands, and live we do, with fire in our eyes and the night on our breath. For the sap swells green, and we're too young for pale death, wrapped in rainbow promises at the edge of the world, hand in hand. So, to all of my pagan brethren and LGBT plus brethren, ladies, gentlemen, and others who fall somewhere between dawn and twilight, I hope that wherever this video finds you, it finds you well and in good health, and I hope that wherever you are able to find your own peace and happiness within your own selves. Love yourselves, find your own self-confidence, and if necessary, call on the name of the Lady Inanna to help you with finding out just what it is about yourself that is so worthy and so deserving of love. because you are, and she knows it, and she's not afraid to tell you.